here in Washington, D.C. this evening. I just checked the Elk Grove temperature. It looks like it's a beautiful day out in Elk Grove. So wish I was at home, but obviously we're doing some things. We've got a couple slides, but before we jump into the slides, I just wanted to express, the strong support of the City Council and the residents of our community in Sacramento County. This past year, obviously, has been a tough year for everyone. The small business owners trying to get through things. I'm extremely empathetic to the families that have school-age children that may be trying to work remotely, but also school their kids and so forth. And I think we all feel the same way. The sooner we can put this pandemic in the rearview mirror, and the quicker we can try to, get our economy going again, get people back to work, get kids back in school, and start rebuilding, what is a brighter future, not just for Elk Grove, but also for our entire region. And the reason why I say those things is when we were thinking about the American Rescue Plan and putting this package together, it really was that in mind. And to the community residents, I want to commend your city council and mayor, for certainly advocating for the resources necessary to try to put us in the best position to get shots in arms, get those vaccinations out there, put the pandemic behind us, but also the resources for the public schools to get kids back in the classroom. And that really was a driving component here. And the last one, as I mentioned earlier, is small business owners have been the ones that have been really hit hardest by this. We've done some things like the Paycheck Protection Act and so forth, but extending some of the emergency assistance loans through the Small Business Administration and so forth, not just to get through, hopefully, this last phase of the pandemic, but also to set us up, for the recovery. So I don't know if the clerk if my staff gave you a couple slides, and if we can go to that first slide. Great, and we can go to the next slide if you want. So if we look at this slide, one of the big things that I heard from all of you, as well as others in the region, was just the big impact on the loss of tax revenue and how that would impact the services that the residents received and so forth. So we fought very hard going back to last May to get some relief directly to the cities. And in this case, Elk Grove, it's an estimated amount, but should receive close to $23 million to help us both, again, put the pandemic behind us, but to recover from this pandemic. And some of the eligible uses for these dollars are obviously the public health crisis at hand. For those folks that really are on the front line, you can consider using it to provide hazard pay. Obviously, the lost revenue from the pandemic. You can also, as we think about the recovery, and you're thinking about some of those investments in infrastructure and so forth, water, sewer, broadband. We all now know the importance of having good access to broadband to both do telehealth, telemedicine visits, but also for your kids to have good access to online education. And then also, we know that the nonprofits like the food bank and others that have really stepped up to help people, families, businesses through this. That's something that the city can consider using these funds for, as well as some of the special districts. Next slide, please. A couple things that they can't be used for, and again, this doesn't really apply to Elk Grove because you've been very fiscally responsible as a city, or we have been, but not to backfill pensions. And so how you should get the first 50% of this allocation no later than 60 days after the bill was signed, and that was March 11th. And then the remaining 50% no later than 12 months after the first payment. And then we've designed some flexibility in here, so the funds should be available through December 31st, 2024. Next slide. And thinking about, again, the other big component here, getting kids back into school. So the Elk Grove Unified School District, is going to get roughly $150 million based on a formula and the number of low-income kids, et cetera. But again, really to help rapidly get our kids back in the classroom in a safe way, get our teachers and their staff back in the classroom as well in the safest possible way. But also understanding we've got a lost year that we have to make up. You know, obviously a lot of folks have struggled to pay their rent, mortgages, et cetera. You have some resources in there. We are in a pandemic, so again, extending resources to help folks get access and coverage under healthcare. And then, as we talked about, the small businesses. And then, you know, one particular area was restaurants that truly have been hit hard by the pandemic. You know, there are targeting smaller size restaurants, women-owned restaurants, minority and veteran-owned businesses. There's some targeted grants that would go in that direction. That's the last slide. And again, you know, this has been a tough year. We've all worked together, and you know, proud to be your member of Congress, but also really proud about the partnership with the local electeds. And you know, let's come out of this, you know, in a stronger position, more resilient. Our job is to try to help make sure we don't have to go through this again. And you know, I am very optimistic if we're smart with how we use these resources as well as, you know, other potential resources for infrastructure. We will come out in a better place, and our future, both in Elk Grove and the region, can look very bright. So I'll stop with that, and I'm happy to take any questions that, you know, the mayor, I know you all have been advocating going back to the early days of the pandemic, understanding the net impact that it was going to have. And we tried to design this with enough flexibility so the federal government wasn't dictating how you use these resources, because I think we understand the local representatives, the local city council members and mayors, actually, you know, you deal with it because you're in the supermarket. I deal with it sometimes when I'm at the Nugget and folks come up to me and you know, are advocating, but you guys deal with it every day, and you're going to have the pulse of what's happening in the city. And you know, again, we want to give you some flexibility, and we're here to work with you. I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, let's get those shots in arms. Let's get through this, and let's come back stronger, more resilient, and you know, in a better place. So, thank you.